before you job hop, really evaluate your current situation and figure
Mm,
out, okay, where do I want to be? And is my current role catering to where that future lies, where that goal lies?
so
So
good.
something I recommend to people is create a list. It could be as long as you want, but I like to write down what are my ideal characteristics of my dream job. So is it that a certain pay? Is it remote work? Is it certain work-life balance, benefits, a good manager? Whatever it is, write that down what your dream job is and evaluate what is your current situation look like? How many boxes does your current role tick off? And if you find another opportunity where it checks off more boxes and gets you closer to that dream role, then I think it's a time to really consider another offer.
Astrid, this is going to be a great conversation. I'm so excited to have you on the show with me today.
Well, thank you for having me, Joseph. I know we've been planning to, get this going and record a podcast together. So I'm excited to be on and, share my life story and a little bit more about my career in tech. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Ain't no time like the present, I like to say. And for those that are watching or those that are listening, this is going to be a great conversation for those that are trying to break into the tech industry, whether you come from a traditional background or not. So definitely take your notes out, write down in the comment section the things that you're gathering from this conversation, because we're going to go right into the boots. And you know what that is. That's symbolic of the mindset one took to get where Astrid is today. And then we're going to go all the way to the brain, which is symbolic of the mindset one not only needs to have in order to be Astrid, but also to scale from there. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. Let's go back to the very beginning because I think the beginning is a great place to start.
No, thank you so much. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm happy to pretty much share my life story here. So, hi, I'm Astrid. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. So, shout out to all my people listening who are or watching who are from LA. But basically, I grew up in San Fernando Valley, so in a small city in San Fernando where it was majority Mexican community. I'm of Mexican descent. Um, and also low income. So starting off, I came from a low income Mexican household. And growing up, I know my parents wanted to provide a better life and education for me and my siblings. So I was fortunate enough to attend really great schools growing up on full financial aid, which was great. And as I grew up, I had access to all these resources and knowledge that I didn't think were possible. So that throughout my journey in during my schooling, I eventually ended up at Princeton University, where I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering. And post college, I ended up at my current company, where now I work as an account executive selling my company's cloud services. So that's a little bit about me, and happy to dive more into my story.
Hey family, it's Joseph here again. Now you have heard me talk about how tech sales has changed my life. I actually want to introduce you to another career that if you decide to go into it, truly is recession proof, and that is cybersecurity. Level Careers is a platform similar to Course Careers that's self-paced and allows you to obtain knowledge and education in cybersecurity, and get this, without prior experience or a degree. That's right. And so you definitely want to get into that. And if you are interested in learning more about cybersecurity, go ahead and click the link below. It's in my description, and use my promo code Joseph10. That's right. Use my promo code Joseph10 in order to save 10% off of the purchase price of that course. So without further ado, I'm not going to delay you. Go click on the link, check out the free introductory courses, and change your life
A
today.
lot of people can really resonate with is how we come from humble beginnings. And so I love to talk a little bit about that. Can you talk about how you grew up, a little bit more into your story, your family life? How was that growing up in LA?
Yeah, definitely. So I love LA. I love being near, like I grew up everyone who's in like a Mexican household, I grew up really close to my aunts and uncles, my grandparents. They all lived within a block from me. So family was very important to me. And also I knew the hard work my parents had put into us having a good life. So basically what I want to touch upon is that when I remember as a little girl, my mom was a stay-at-home mom and she wanted to start working. So her focus was, okay, how do I get a job where I can also watch my daughter, right? Watch my children. So she managed to find a position at a daycare where she would actually clean and be one of the the cleaners there, right? The people who are the staff that helps making sure that everything is good. So she was hired, and at that daycare, she was able to get free daycare for me since she worked there. The boss at the time, she was this wealthy woman who happened to have children and grandchildren who went to really good schools within the LA area. So and from there they went to really good private schools, and from there they were able to go on to Oxford, Stanford, you name it, these really great institutions. So she told me, she looked at my mom, she said, "Your daughter is really smart. She looks like she, is very gifted. Why don't you put her in these schools or apply to these schools so that she has the opportunity to get a better education?" And what's so great is that my mom and my dad both jumped at that opportunity, and they decided to take the chance and apply. Knowing like most of these, to be honest, these schools, they cost somewhere from like 15K plus per year. Some are even like 30,000, which is pretty much a college degree. And I was fortunate enough to get in and also receive full financial aid. So that was a starting point. My parents really wanting to again better me and my siblings' education. That was like a jumping point from where I am today. So throughout my life, I really, not only did I receive a good education, but I think what I want to focus on is I was able to have access to the resources and knowledge that I think a lot of people unfortunately don't have access to. And again, this is kind of where my whole philosophy is I feel a lot of times it's not that we don't know what we don't not it's not that we don't want to do better for ourselves, excuse me, it's we don't know what we don't know. So people they're figuring out, okay, I want to get to this point, but how exactly do I get there? And again, I was
Mm.
fortunate enough to be provided with that information, and that's something now I want to share. So throughout my life, again, going back, I received a really good education, went to private schools all my life, and where I was around a lot of celebrities' kids, CEOs' kids. It was people with a lot of wealth, but again, a lot of access, and some of the best teachers and college counselors. And from there, that's when I ended up going to Princeton University, where again, a lot more doors were open for me. So what's great about that is being able to come from humble beginnings, but then working my way up to where I am now. And I just want to give back where possible.
No, I love that you said what you said. Thinking about your mother cleaning, my mom actually had a cleaning company. There was a moment
Yeah.
in time where she actually had to make that decision to say, "Hey, I'm going to start as an immigrant to this country.
Mhm.
I'm going to start my own business cleaning houses and offices."
Yeah, no, that's all. And the funny thing is, I do want to mention, because now my
Yeah.
mom, she stayed with that company till now. She still works there, or at the daycare. Sorry, not company per se, but and now she's actually a teacher. So she teaches kindergarten, which is amazing to see. So I always go back when I visit LA, and I go see her at her work too sometimes. During the day, it's nice to meet some of my old teachers that she used to work with that even taught me or took care of me, I would say. And it's just to see the growth, and also to witness like her boss witnessing how far I've come in my journey and how far my siblings have come, how many opportunities that have come along our way because of that opportunity to attend a school, to attend
Hmm.
schools like those. It's just wonderful. It's awesome.
Yeah. Oh man, it's like a way like to give
Yeah,
back almost
full
when you do
circle.
that.
Yeah,
Full
moment.
circle moment. Yeah. And so it's funny that you said that as well, because it kind of goes back to what you're saying. When you're exposed to something, it really opens your eyes. And so the same thing is true. Like I had a situation where it was actually through my church that I was able to get a scholarship to a very well, let's put it like this, 20,000 plus per year,
Yeah,
private
exactly.
school in
I
Manhattan.
don't know why. Just a side note, why is schooling so expensive? Like education
Hey
to me
man.
is one of the most fundamental rights to some. I mean, not a
Yeah.
right, but to me, it should be a fundamental right. And yet
Hmm.
they make it so hard, to like the public school system is, not as great as we would like it to be. And then so the alternative is private school, but yet most people can't afford to put their kids there. So it's just
Money.
so frustrating that that's what the world we live in currently, the society we live in. So
You're right. It absolutely is. It is one of those things. that is frustrating. That's why I personally like course careers, because it's looking to break that mold. I
Mhm.
mean, Troy has like a mastermind plan that honestly I can't get involved with right now and tell anything. But all I can say is this: like, look out for what's going to be coming through course careers, because that is going to be literally changing the game and how
Mhm.
people transition into careers. But
Mhm.
what I want to say again about that exposure part was, once I got exposed to different environments, it went from, okay, let's figure out, putting sentences together. So now you're learning Latin, and now you're exposed to the Met Opera at a young age. And so I want to kind of talk. I have two questions for you, but I'm going to start with the first one that I have is, what lessons did you learn from watching your mother, as you say, grow, not just from where she was to where she is now? How did that motivate you in regards to you and your siblings and how to do better?
No, that is a great question. So again, my parents, one of their one of their things that they wanted to instill with us is that it's important to be able to critically think, and to be able to go after, have the discipline and go after your goals. So that's something, especially that I learned from my mom. My mom is a very disciplined woman and and she perseveres. If she has a goal she wants to attain, she's nothing's going to get in her way. And that's something where I also feel like I have in me. And I've learned from her and both my parents actually. They've both been really great at that and instilling that in me. And so now in my career, especially working in sales, that is something that I think has taken me a long way in my
Mhm.
career. Being able to have that discipline, having, I call it more actually grit. So to me, grit equals discipline, perseverance, and with that passion. So you add and you couple in that passion with that perseverance, and you have what I call grit. And I had a manager tell me that one of the most important fundamental traits that a seller can have, or a great seller can have, is having grit. It's like never giving up, always going after that sell. Like if something, if maybe a dispute obstacle comes in the way, at least you are finding ways to solve for that. So again, and that also critical thinking. That's why education to me is so important, because I figured out that is my way to having a better life. If I'm able to critically think, and examine the world and view, then I'm able to make more educated uh, decisions, and figure out, okay, what exactly do I want in my life and how do I get there? So those are two traits. And also, again, something they taught me was just um, never giving up, and giving back. Like I it tears me up sometimes when I think about it, because I'm like, they sacrificed so much for us.
So much.
um I mean, you can relate to, I mean, so many people
Yeah.
can relate, just so that we can eventually break those generational curses, and do better for our future families. I always think about too, where my parents, and they don't want me talking about this, but they're still paying off student loan debt. And my dad did eventually graduate, but my mom never even graduated college. So I remember they would attend school while we were little, because they had us very young, and yeah, and to pursue their careers, but they never, or she never graduated. And so knowing that it's been 20 plus years and they still haven't paid it off, it's crazy, because I
Yeah.
know me, I graduated without debt. I was fortunate enough to not be put in that position.
Yeah.
So I really am grateful for that. And also, last thing I'll say is that they always taught us, okay, if you don't know something, surround yourself with people who do. And that's,
Yeah.
again, kind of back to my story, where my mom was like, well, I want better for my children, but I don't know how exactly to provide that. Well, to her and to my dad as well, the best way to do that is through education, because
Yeah.
education will give you the knowledge and the tools you need to hopefully, go to a good college. I mean, if it wasn't so expensive, like, go to a good college ideally and get a good job. And then from there, being able to afford what you want in life. So those are the things I really valued and learned from my parents. And I'm, again, feeling very blessed and grateful.
Yeah. And speaking of a story that I'm not too sure if I should tell, but this was such a powerful lesson to me when I got older. I was actually embarrassed by this by the time, but our parents do work hard. I remember one time, again, my mom had a cleaning business, and our car broke down, and she literally took, I would say it's like a 50-pound vacuum, and and a couple of cleaning supplies that she could take with her. And on my way to school, she got on the bus with me with that big old
Oh,
vacuum and cleaning
she's so
supplies.
cute.
And my mind is like, oh my gosh, mom, like
No,
I'm
that's
thinking that,
commitment. I love that. No,
oh
it's a good work ethic. I think
yeah,
that's something I didn't touch upon too, but the work
yeah,
ethic. I mean, again, nobody has a better work ethic than my mom, and
hmm
that has carried me. I feel like in my career, a lot of
yeah,
the times, I feel like it's the little things that help you stand out as an employee.
yeah.
And especially again as a seller, I make sure that I constantly follow up with my clients that, or even internally, that I'm
Mm,
constantly making sure I go above and beyond to have everything organized. If I don't know the answer to something, which again,
find the
important tip, if
answer.
you don't answer, always tell people, it's like, be honest. You don't know the answer, but you're gonna find it, and you're gonna find it by whatever date you set. Say, I don't know, but I'm gonna give you the answer by this Friday, 5 p.m. And if you do that, if you're able to go back and provide the answer as you promised, that builds a lot of trust
Yeah.
with your clients, and it makes selling much easier. So I think a lot of that does tie to work ethic, because it's how much do you care, and how much are you investing and putting in your work. Because if you put a good in work, you're going to reap the benefits, and hopefully financial benefits from that as a seller if you get into sales. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so like I definitely saw that with her. I mean, she's traveling. We lived in
Mhm.
Brook. I don't know if you know much about New York, but she traveled from Brooklyn to Queens to Long Island
Crazy.
with
Yeah, I
that.
actually
Yeah.
lived in New York for 2 years before the
Yeah.
pandemic hit. So no, that is crazy. I mean, kudos to your mom. Like I
Yeah.
can just imagine. And again, she's raised a wonderful son, and if you have any siblings, I'm sure they're great too. So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And now we're talking about exposure, going back to that part, when you're like you said, like when you don't know something, right, until you can actually see it, it's
Yeah.
revealed to you, and you're like, man, this is something else. Now that exposure is a twofold, because at the same time as you're being exposed to and educated on, sometimes you realize that there are some differences,
Yeah.
socioeconomical differences, even status in life with those that you're going to school with, and that could introduce this sort of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to navigate these two worlds? You're going to school with the wealthiest of the wealthy, and you're coming home to where
Yeah.
your home is. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that?
So again, if we want to, yeah, imposter syndrome, that is something I'm actually still battling with, if I'm going to be very honest. And I think a lot of us battle with imposter syndrome. We
Hmm.
feel like it, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's socially, it's hard not to encounter that. But growing up, it was two worlds. It was definitely where, I felt like you mentioned, I would go to school for 8 hours of the day, and I was around people with a lot of money and wealth, and just it was just crazy, the things I saw, the what, people's houses, their cars, and what they could afford, summer camps, travel, concerts, whatever it was. I was like, wow.
Oh
That's
yeah,
crazy. Like I didn't think that was even well, not that I didn't think it was possible, but I was like, wow, like people are getting front row seats to a concert, like $1,000 seats, and they're 13
yeah,
years old, and then coming back home again, we always had enough, but it definitely was a different environment.
oh
Um,
yeah,
because again, in my home, my parents, like, we lived in it was 5 people living in a 700 to 800 square foot house, and
yeah,
2 bedrooms, and my parents were sleeping in the living room, right, just so
yeah,
my siblings and I could have our own beds, or me and my sister were in one room, my brother was in another. So
yeah.
things like that, again, two different worlds. But how I navigated that imposter syndrome, and even up to this day, is I remind myself I am where I'm at for a reason. And
Mm,
especially when you're uh like doing interviews, or if you're in a job, I like to tell people, like, if you're currently in a job role and you feel like, why am I here, think about it. Nowadays, jobs, literally, how many interviews do you go through? You probably go through like 5 or 6. Like, it's ridiculous amount. So
yeah,
if by those 5 or 6 interviews that they didn't reject you, there's a reason why you're there. And that's something, again, even as a child growing up, I had to remind myself, I had to apply to go to all my life to go to elementary school, to go to high school. I had to apply and take tests. And it was tough, but the fact that I was accepted and got were in the situation to receive the education, that means whoever, accepted me must have saw something into me. So that helped me going. And another thing too that helps me with imposter syndrome, aside from just again remind myself I am where I am, is that I value learning. I always feel like it's important to put yourself in a position again where you're not the smartest in the room, where there's always something to learn. So my dad always told me there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So if you feel like you fail in any task there is, don't see it as failure. See it as more like, oh, okay, what did I learn? What feedback from the situation did I get? And how can I do better next time? Because in the end, people have to remind themselves it's only a job. It's only like you only feel inferior usually when it comes to certain situations and tasks. And those, they're ephemeral. They don't. They're fleeting. And as long as you stay true to your goals and to who you are, and remind yourself, like, I'm here for a reason, I think it's possible to overcome that imposter syndrome.
Hey there, thank you so much for watching this video. This video is actually sponsored by Course Careers. So whether you're interested in breaking in as a tech sales representative, if you're interested in actually doing IT or digital marketing, not only do they have free introductory courses for you right now, go to the description and check that out, but they also have $50 off that you could get through me, Joseph50. That's right, $50 off through Joseph50. So if you're interested in getting into that course, any which one, whether it's, again, tech sales, IT, or digital marketing, look no further. Go down to the description below, click on the link, and sign up right now. What are you waiting for?
That's beautiful and well said. Like the value in education, being a constant learner, and understanding that what you're feeling right now is just something that's basically kind of shaking you off of your position for that moment.
Yeah.
But you could assume your position and keep moving forward. That is so good. And I think those are listening, again, write your notes in the comments section. This is good, valuable stuff here. So now we're gonna get into the fun stuff, the stuff that everybody's like, okay, let's get to tech, right? So let's talk about it. So basically, in regards to tech, you went to Princeton, you got an opportunity to go get scholarships. You don't have any student debt at this point. Which
no doubt.
Fantastic. That's another conversation altogether. How you did that. Now, but in regards to now you breaking into tech, can you talk about that? Because you said you were an engineer. That's part of a jump.
So my story about that is a little. I don't know if people love it or be like, oh, well, that's random. So basically, I stumbled into my specific role in tech sales. So I always knew I wanted to pursue the tech industry, just because, again, I was surrounded by people in my degree who pursued the tech industry after, who most of them ended up becoming software engineers, or they did tech consulting. Those were, or product management. Those were the three routes that people within my major followed. So that's where something I was set on. And that's why another thing I mentioned, surrounding yourself with mentors and people who are smarter than you. Because even when I was applying, senior year and looking for jobs I wanted to get into, I honestly just asked people around me. I said, well, and people above me, I said, okay, well, where are you planning to work? Or like, what are you planning to do after college? Where are you planning to work? And a lot of them mentioned, hey, I want to, I'm going to work for Microsoft as a software engineer. I'm going to Facebook, other big startups, tech startups. And so to me, that was, I don't say second nature, but it was kind of like, okay, that's the route you take. And I love that I was comfortable saying that, because now I realize, like, it's not as easy as people think. But again, because I was surrounded by those who knew how the path to get there, or who, were able to work in the tech industry, then I felt like it was something I could do. So again, that's why I recommend, finding people who can mentor you or guide you in that way. So anyways, back to how I got into my current role in tech sales. So my goal was, I realized I was terrible at coding. I did not want to code. I tried. I could code, but debugging, it just wasn't for me. So that was something I crossed that off my list. I didn't want to do traditional hardware engineering. Again, I wasn't passionate about it. It's something I loved in my degree, but wasn't my goal moving forward. So what I was left with, or that some job that really interests me, was actually product management, which essentially is you mix technology with I would say the business objectives. So I got in got stumbled into my role into tech sales. So technical solution, it turns out it was a sales role. So ever since then, I got it. So I got into my job working in sales. I figured out technical solutions specialist met tech sales. And what was crazy was this is a job that wasn't actually advocated or talked about within my school, surprisingly. Like Princeton didn't usually, not that they didn't promote it, but it wasn't one of the traditional roles that people went into post college. And so with this role, it opened my eyes to wow, this is a role where not only can you scale your pay fast, really quick, you can make some great money, but also the other benefits that come from working in tech sales is learning about new technology, being able to, build your negotiation skills, your relationship building skills, the networking aspect of when, developing relationships with clients and being able to network with others. There's just so many benefits to working in sales that I'm just shocked it's not talked about more in general. So.
You and me both. Like if I knew about this straight out of high school, I might not have gone I might not have gone to college.
And I think another bonus too is that a degree is not required to get into this role at all.
Exactly.
I think for most jobs, except for obviously being a doctor and an engineer, in my case, most jobs, you learn you learn on the job. Like there's nothing really where you have to know prior to perform your job. You're basically learning the tasks on there. Obviously, there are some roles that do require maybe knowing how to code or a programming language, but essentially once you have those fundamental like tools, then you're able to just learn on the job. And sales is one of those roles in particular. And again, that just all the benefits that you get from working in sales, I think you learn so many skills that are transferable to a lot of other types of roles. So that's another great thing too. It's like, while I definitely want to stick to my role in tech sales, to my career in tech sales, I definitely think there's other types of roles that I could possibly get into later in my career.
Yeah. And let's talk about that. You started off as an SDR, correct? Well,
Yes, I did.
The other terminology that
Yeah.
I wasn't too familiar about. I never heard that one before, actually.
Yeah, I know. It's called Technical Solutions Special. It was very interesting. So that role, my company tends to have different names for the sellers. It's not the traditional SDR, then to account executive, etc. They'll have names such as Digital Sales Specialist, which is an SDR role. Technical Solution Specialist, which is more of it's an SDR / sales engineer type role. So so I got to choose. I originally started off, actually, fun fact, as a sales engineer in training. But I actually moved into an SDR role because I realized I wanted not to be less technical, but I wanted to really manage the relationship and the territory that I was working with. So that was the route.
Wow. So how did you scale from there? What was next for you after this particular role?
Oh, okay. So I have managed to stay with my company for 4 years. It'll be going on 4 years in August. So I haven't job hopped, and I know a lot of people promote job hopping, which I actually do too. I think it's one of the best ways to scale your pay. But I also think that you really, in order, before you job hop, really evaluate your current situation and figure out, okay, where do I want to be? And is my current role catering to where that future lies, where that goal lies? So something I recommend to people is create a list. It could be as long as you want, but I like to write down a list of what are my ideal characteristics of my dream job. So is it that a certain pay? Is it remote work? Is it certain work-life balance, benefits, a good manager? Whatever it is, write that down, what your dream job is, and evaluate, okay, what does your current situation look like? How many boxes does your current role tick off? And if you find another opportunity where it checks off more boxes and gets you closer to that dream role, then I think it's a time to really consider another offer and to, again, job hop. And also evaluate if you're unhappy with your current situation. Think about it. Am I, unhappy with my work-life balance? Do I feel micromanaged? Do I not like my pay? And if you're feeling overall, if you create a pros and cons list and feel like there's more cons than pros, then again, that's another reason why I do recommend looking for other opportunities. But back to kind of my career progression. So I haven't job hopped, but basically why I haven't job hopped and what I feel has made me so successful in my current role is that I've been very focused on negotiating my salary and asking for promotions. So that's something I'm really big on. Again, my work, my page, I talk a lot about my journey to financial independence. I think the correct term is financial independence versus financial freedom, because I am technically financially free. I don't have any major debt currently, so I have enough to support me. But to me, financial independence, where I want to get to a point where I'm work optional, where I don't have to work if I don't need to. So that's something I focus on. So I'm very focused on that. And something I advocate is that you can get to that goal of financial independence on any salary, but one of the best ways to do that is by increasing your income. It just makes life so much more easier if you have more discretionary cash. If you're able to pay your bills and have money left over to invest and to save and to spend on the things you like. So again, I'm very big on increasing my income. And so I was very focused on how do I increase my income in the role I am. Just so everybody knows on here, I've been able to get promoted 3 times in the past 3.5 years at the same company. So it's definitely possible. And I want to share how I've done that. I don't want to gatekeep. But basically, what I've been told and what a lot of my mentors have helped me with when it comes to negotiating is these few things. One, make sure to have a list, write down a list of your accomplishments that you have done in your current role. So throughout the year, if you've done something that has positively impacted your team, if you've accomplished something where in sales, let's just say I signed, a $1 million deal, I'm going to write that down so that later on, when I want to negotiate my salary and ask for a raise or a promotion, I have that list already ready of my accomplishments, and I don't need to figure out, okay, why do I need to ask this? I already have kind of my my reasoning, my backup. So that's something that I think is super important. Write down a list of your accomplishments. Again, it could be on a Google Doc, whatever you want, that's what you're going to leverage. Another thing I highly recommend is develop a great relationship with your manager. I think a lot of people forget that your manager ideally wants to look out for you. Because if you're happy, that means it looks good on them, and and so forth. So, and people need to realize is your manager is going to be the first person to advocate for you when it comes to promotion. So in my case, my manager goes to people higher up and says, hey, I really want to promote Astrid for these reasons. Based on the work I've seen, I definitely think she should get promoted. And that, again, they're going to be your advocate. So you want to develop a good relationship. And how you do that is I suggest people do cadence calls, not cadence, but like set up biweekly calls, check in with them. If don't like overly bug your manager, but in a sense, like develop a good relationship where you can, because to me, that's my past 2 promotions have been because my manager has really saw something in me and really advocated for me. And the third thing too is start early with your conversation. So a lot of people forget, they think, okay, it's the end of the year, maybe I want to get promoted. And then they'll come to find out, okay, there's no budget for it. They can't promote you, or you're missing all these requirements to get promoted. So I'll never forget, my very first manager told me, he said, if you want to get promoted by next year, you need to start that conversation now, a whole year in advance. And the reason for that is if you start the conversation early, it lets your management know, okay, I see what their career goals are. I want, I know that they're pursuing this. I want to make sure we have that conversation of what exactly they need to do in order to get that promotion. And again, when they outline exactly what you need to do, it gives you an opportunity to say, okay, is this reasonable? Is this outrageous goal? It becomes an open conversation and puts the onus on your management to really give you a specific outline of what they need to see. And if you hit those goals, then 99% of the time you'll get that promotion. So those are my 3 tips for that.
I have my air horn, but oh man, let me just break down
Yeah.
the diamond in the rough that you just gave to everybody. If
Mhm.
you're listening to this, if you're watching this, let's look at that framework one more time. She said in a year in advance, so you have your framework of a year, right?
Mhm.
You want to have early conversations, early mentions that you want to get a promotion.
Mhm.
You while you're doing that, you also have your list there and you've been establishing a relationship with your manager.
Exactly.
So this is not just a hey, when you know what, I'm tired, things are getting hard at home, I want to raise. This is a strategic, systematic way you can approach this. That
Mhm.
honestly, I think, especially if you have a company that you have a great culture in,
Mhm.
you like your people that you work with, there's a lot of intangibles there. You want to explore this before you explore job hopping, and nothing against people that do that.
Yeah, no, and again,
Yeah.
I am all for like if you're gonna get that 30% raise and you're feeling like, okay, this is the best opportunity for me, go for it. I think for me, and I actually spoke with my manager the other day. We were at
Mm-hmm.
a team meeting. And I told him one of the strongest reasons why I'm, at my company. I mean, I love the work. I love the people I work with. First of all, I love the work culture. And
Yeah.
most importantly, I love my management and my team. He really makes it enjoyable for me to work in. I don't feel micromanaged and I feel like there's a lot of career growth. Even my most recent promotion, he told me, I remember I asked him, I was working on a very complicated deal and he had to get involved because he said, he's like, this is probably the most complex deal I've dealt with. And so we were talking every day during the holiday season, pretty much, just to get this closed. And throughout that time, I said, I was building that relationship, like continuing like to make sure I was showing good work. And I
Yeah.
decided to ask him. I said, hey, this is what I'm thinking about a promotion, and these are the reasons why. These are my business outcomes. These are my skill sets of what separates you apart. And he kind of he was like, okay, we'll see what I can do. And sure enough, it was in February, I think it was February of this year, he promoted me. And he told me, he said, because of the hard work I saw you put into this deal and how much you really, made, had that grit and made sure, because we could have just let it fall apart, honestly. And it
Mm.
was so close to falling apart, but I stuck with it and I made sure to coordinate everything and really focus and persevere in that sense, that he admired that from me. And promoted me. And also on top of that, he even said, he's like, I want to find you a mentor within the company,
Wow.
a female executive, who I think, would be a great mentor to you and really help you with your career goals. Because again, I have a lot of mentors, and that's something, again, all the listeners listening, make sure to find mentors in your life.
Mm.
Because those are the people that when you're struggling, or you're not even struggling, but when you just need advice, they can give you some sound advice, and you can feel, okay, this person has been experienced, they've probably gone through something similar, let me see what they've done and maybe I can do the same thing. So
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And I want to encourage somebody that's listening that right now. They said, "Hey, I'm on the outside looking in. I'm not into tech yet. I want to get there. I've got a lot of no's." Be encouraged by the story that you're hearing right now. Someone that was able to leverage that network, be able to break into the industry, not only break in, but be able to scale from there within the same company, and really set a name for herself.
I do want to say a funny story, and I
Yeah.
talk about this story a lot because, again, my path into tech seems kind of traditional, as we were talking about, in the sense of I went to college and afterwards, I got a job.
Hmm.
But I will say how I got this particular role in tech sales is actually not as simple as that. So basically, when I
Mm.
was applying, I remember that there were a lot of tech companies coming to Princeton just to hire Princeton people. So they would come to our school and say, "Hey, we want to hire 10 Princeton people from your class. So let's do a whole interview process here." So I would submit my resume and I think, okay, this is great. I'm not competing with like thousands of other applicants. I'm only competing with people within my school. Like, this is such an awesome opportunity. Turns out though, most of those companies were rejecting me. They wouldn't even like give me a chance to interview. And I was shocked because I thought to myself, I'm like, not even a first interview round. Like, this is heartbreaking. I thought, well, is there something wrong? What did I do? But that's just reality. It just, maybe my GPA wasn't high enough. Who knows what it was, but I wasn't even getting a first round. So the job that I applied to, that I currently am in, I sent out an application, and I remember I wasn't hearing back for 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks, and I was a little disheartened.
Yeah.
That week, one weekend, so 2 weeks, and there was a weekend where I decided to go to New York City, and I was celebrating a friend's birthday. And so we were partying. We went out that night, and we went to go eat some pizza at Ray's Pizza on St. Mark's Place. I don't know if you're familiar.
There's a lot of Ray's Pizza in New York.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a lot, but like on the one on St. Mark's Place. And so we went to go get some pizza. We were post partying at like 2 to 3 a.m. And we decided to go sit outside because there was no seats inside. And while I'm eating my pizza, I overhear people talking, and all of a sudden they mentioned the company I applied to from the previous 2 weeks ago. And I perked up and I said, "Wait a minute, that company, I just applied there. Like, do you guys work there?" And they said, "Yes, we're here for a conference. We're recruiters. We are recruiters at this company." And I was like, "No way, you're a recruiter."
Get out of here.
At that company that I applied to. So
what's your email?
Yeah, so exactly. So I spoke to them and I was like, "Hey, I just applied to this particular role. I haven't heard back. These are my credentials. Why, I think I would be a good fit. Do you know the person hiring?" And they said, "Yes, we know that recruiter for that role. We'd be happy to, inform him of your resume and, have him alerted to it." Sure enough, once I sobered up, like the next day, I sent over my information, and it kickstarted. Then I finally heard back, and it kickstarted the interview process. So that goes to show you, it doesn't really matter where you come from, because the role I'm in now, it wasn't because of the school I went to. It was all because I put in that work, and I also networked in the most like the randomest places, but it worked out for me. So if again, anyone listening, if you don't forget to constantly, I don't want to say network per se, like as in you have to network, but strike up conversations with people, get to know people's life stories, because if you develop those relationships, you never know what opportunities you might come across too. So
wow. And it's so funny, I said network and I didn't even know that part of your story.
Yeah, so it's a crazy story, because even it's funny, I didn't think about it until, I would say, pretty recently. And I've been telling that story more so because I want to show people that, hey, like, there's so many paths that you can take to get to the same goal. So don't judge your story or your path based on someone else's. So my journey is going to be different from yours, and your journey is going to be different from someone else's, but it's all possible. To me, I'm a big advocate of, like, there's money for everyone. There's opportunities for everyone. How we get there might be different, but that's why I'm so open and transparent about my pay, my work, what I've done to get promoted, because I think there's a seat at the table for everybody.
I agree. It reminds me of the story of Ramsey, one of the people that I've interviewed before. He's a sales engineer.
Mm-hmm.
He got his job at a barbecue.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And again, not just to advocate for sales, why I love tech sales so much is that a lot of my former coworkers are actually working now at their former clients' companies, because they've developed that great relationship, and now they're like killing it at their clients' companies. So again, when you're in sales, you have that opportunity to develop these great relationships with big companies, and they get to know you, and they see that you become an advocate for them, and they're going to say, "Hey, come work for us." It happens very often. And again, you're not only are you doing your job and selling and making a lot of money, but you're also inadvertently networking. So
yeah,
that's something to remind yourself of.
And let me add something, if I may, because you're
No,
more
go ahead.
experienced than I
Yeah.
am. I'm doing great in my job. Don't get me wrong, but I'm still growing and I'm still learning about this industry. One thing I've heard, and again, correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, is they actually do your company. Let's say if you get poached to another company, one of their clients, they actually are happy about that because now they have a relationship. They have an inside man at the
Yes,
other company that will have continuous working relationships
that
with
is
their
very true.
previous company. What did you say? Yeah.
Yes, I will verify that. And in my particular job, so I work with what are called our business partners. So I'm really focused on helping our partners build with our cloud. So not
Mhm.
only do they, build with our cloud services, they put their applications on our cloud, but on top of that, I'm focused on helping them go to market and grow their business. So for me, I'm like, hey, I want you, because the more you grow your business, the more customers you acquire. That means you're going to use more of our cloud, which is great. So it's a win-win. But again, so it's more of a partnership that I end up having with my clients, and that partnership, it builds a relationship where now sometimes, again, I have a former coworker, she moved to a former partner of ours,
Yeah.
and she actually manages the relationship between our old company and that partner. So it's just awesome.
Wow.
And my manager always says, it's like, do we know anybody? Are there any former people from our company working at those other people those companies that we're targeting? Because we want, if those relations are already established, it makes selling easier. I think people need to realize too is that a lot of so how you sell a product to me is more so what problem does your product solve for that person, like focusing on what problems you're solving, what pain points you're addressing. That's super important. But on top of that, is people, you can have multiple products doing the same thing, but in the end, I think it's the relationships, it's the trust that really wins the business. So that's something that again, you can't teach someone how to be good at building relationships. That's something
Yeah.
where you learn through experience, or you're just naturally good at. And that's a key skill set in sales, and that it's not something you need to go to college for. So that's that's what I want to mention is you don't need to go to college for, like, a lot of people have these transferable sales skills that they just need to be able to translate in their resume and then hopefully, land a job in sales.
So good. I totally agree with that. Most times they could buy the product someplace else and probably
Yeah.
get the solution from somebody else, but they like you. So that's
Yeah.
why they're gonna buy from you. That's
Exactly. Again,
something.
I think
Yeah.
that I think one number one definitely is though like the problem, the use case, but
Yeah.
two is definitely I think the relationships. At least again, that's what I've seen
Yeah.
in the few years that I've worked in sales, and then what I've learned from others as well. So keep that in mind, and just a little insight into the sales world.
Nice, nice. So we're gonna pivot to the mindset in a second, but can't. I'll be remiss if I don't talk a little bit about you and your larger following on Instagram and TikTok and how you're killing it over there, sharing great tips. But one of the things I wanted to kind of bring up was that you are very transparent about your salary,
Mhm.
and ladies and gentlemen, if you want to check out her, I gotta have the links below. You can check out her Instagram, you can check out her TikTok, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Very transparent about not only how you make, on the budget that you have, but your salary. What's the word that we want to use? Because it's a very there's a buzzword for it right now where it's basically transparency when it comes to your salary
Yeah.
transparency.
Mhm.
Can
Yeah.
you
No,
talk about
exactly. Key transparency. Yeah, exactly.
yeah? Can you talk about why that is important?
So for me, I've boiled down pay transparency, why it's important to me, for two reasons. So one, I think the most obvious reason would be, one, am I making the money I'm supposed to be making, quote unquote? Like, am I being
Mhm.
paid enough? So pay transparency, there's a lot of statistics showing that certain demographics or working demographics are being paid less than others, such as women get paid usually less than men, whatever it is. But these numbers have come out, and you've realized over
Wow.
years that has been happening. And even with you include like raises, if someone starts off with a lower pay than another person, even with similar raises, they're still going to end up lower pay than the person, especially if they're doing the same type of work. And I think that's where pay transparency comes into play, because you want to make sure, okay, for the work that I'm doing, am I getting paid comparable to my peers?
Yeah.
That's super important. And I also always mention, or like to mention, that I'll never forget, like a year to a year and a half ago, it was on a Latina Equal Pay Day, I found out that Latina is one of the largest demographics in the U.S. Working demographics in the U.S. is getting paid the lowest. We're the lowest paid. So we're getting paid
Wow.
57 cents to every dollar that a white male makes.
Wow.
And to me, that was just a shocking number. And to add to that, I found out that Latinas were only counted for 2% of STEM jobs. So being a Latina, in tech industry, I was like, wow, this is, I got a lot going against me, it seems like, or not going against me, but there's a lot of I don't say pressure, but you feel like, wow, that these are the numbers, and I want to change that.
100%.
So that's something where I take that and I'm like, okay, well, how can I make a difference, and how can I encourage people who look like me to ask for more? Because a lot of times too, some might say, well, are you asking for those promotions? Are you asking for that pay? And I think we are, but how do we best ask for them? And I always think too, it's like, you can say you want a raise, but what do you have that's backing that up? And that's why my manager told me, it's like, okay, great. He told me, he's like, I want a raise too, but what business outcomes have you shown? What skill set do you have that can justify that raise? And so that's something I like to focus on. And then the second thing, reason why pay transparency is so important to me, is because I think, going back to, you don't know what you don't know. I think a lot of times we tend to limit ourselves as to how much we can make. And if people are more open about their salaries, then you realize how much money there is in the world. You'll realize, wow, someone in my position can make 500K in 1 year, or can make $1 million. Like, if they're doing the exact same thing as me, why can't I also make that? So for me, it's really opening your eyes as to what is possible, that I think pay transparency allows for. Because if I'm going to be honest, I think most people are like this. Growing up, I thought 100K was $1 million pretty much. Like, you think, like, once you make 100K, you're set. And unfortunately, with inflation, that's just not the case. Now 100K does not go very far in most situations. And yet people don't even make that. But if you open your eyes and say, okay, someone in this certain career path that I want to pursue can end up making 100 plus K or 150K, why shouldn't I pursue that if that's my goal? So that's something, again, I really like to promote and tell people that, because I never thought at my age that I could make $250,000 in 1 year. Like, I didn't even think that was possible. And even coming out of college, I remember a lot of my classmates were getting offers for 100K easily. So no experience, just their degree, or just, their ability to code, whatever it was. And most of them were getting 120,000 plus. Not everybody, but again, the fact that was even a possibility, it had me set on that. I'm like, well, why can't I do that as well? So I remember, like I mentioned, I was struggling to get interviews, but eventually I was able to refine my resume and I started getting interviews and offers. And I'll never forget, I ended up getting 5 offers, and each of my offer was one step closer to that 100K. It started off, I think, as a 55K. Then the next offer was 75. Then it was 85, and then it hit to 100. And it was funny, it came consecutively. And I told myself, I kept praying, I was like, God, please let, the company I'm at, before I got the offer, I was like, please let it be to my goal. I think I can get there. And sure enough, it was. So it was just, I feel very blessed in that regard. But I think what really helped was that my mindset was so focused on achieving what I knew was possible, just because I surrounded myself with people who had something similar. So.
Wow, that shows how much surrounding yourself is so important. Like,
Yeah.
you could have gotten that first offer and be like, this is amazing. It's more than what I've seen in my neighborhood, or what my
I was like, this is great. Yeah, a good starting off point. But I was like, no, I know I can do better. And again, it's not to put down anybody because again, that salary, 55K, still a great salary.
Yeah.
Like, by all means. But just because I knew what was possible again, and also I also felt like if I started off higher, then maybe again from those afterwards, those raises, I can at least, like, get even higher from that. It won't be big leaps and bounds. And I do also want to say why pay transparency is so important is that I remember I had a female coworker. I went to a meeting with her. I went to a conference with her, and we were talking about pay transparency. And I was saying how I wanted to get ask for a raise or a promotion. And she told me, she said, she actually gave me advice. Like all my female coworkers in particular, they've all given me advice on how to ask for raises. And she told me, she said, the reason why I think it's so important for women to talk about that, or everybody too, but particularly women in the tech industry, is because she found out that she was actually being way underpaid compared to her male colleagues. And she had spoken with her colleagues one night. They were just talking about pay, and they said, they're like, they told her, they said, wait a minute, you're getting paid way less than us. And that night they went to their manager to make sure that they advocated for her and said, hey, you need to pay her what we're getting paid. And so again, for anybody who thinks it doesn't happen, it does. The discrepancy is there. And it's important to keep having these conversations so that you can not only help yourself, but also help others along the way.
Wow. So and this is for the audience here, like, you may be thinking when you're seeing somebody talk about their salary in tech, they may give a range or whatever. It's not to showboat. It's actually to advocate. And for most of us,
For most people,
it's really is to advocate and say, hey, this is what I'm getting. You can get it too. And so that is such a good thing. And now that we're coming to the close where we're talking about the mindset, you said it already. Like that sounds like you. The fact that you had that deal that some people probably
would have run around.
You was like,
I stuck with it.
It's
funny. That was the first deal I had where I was working throughout the holidays. So I'm going to keep it real with everybody on here. Sales can be overwhelming at times. So there's some times where, at the end of quarters, like the 12 months out of the year, we divide our time frame into quarters, so 3 months each. There's pressure to close deals. So that was the first time I actually had that much pressure. But I told myself, you know what? Again, there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. I thought to myself, like, I'm learning so much from this opportunity. Like, even if it doesn't happen, that's fine. I've learned so much. I've grown as a seller, but I was very committed though to have it closed because I knew, this would look great on my list of accomplishments. I really wanted to write it down. And sure enough, I was able to, and it paid off in the end. So that was awesome.
That was awesome. And I guess maybe we'll have you come on again to the show when you're a VP, because that's where you're heading.
Anytime, yeah. And again, everyone, feel free to follow me on my social media, FinTech Latina. I talk a lot about my career in tech sales and also how my personal finance journey. And most importantly, I share tidbits of how to actually transition into tech sales, because I know that's a lot of people's on the forefront of people's mind. Well, how do I actually break into tech? This sounds great. What are the steps to get there? So I try to lay out exactly what a role in tech sales looks like the day to day, and some tips I have to actually break in and for interviews, etc. So
it will be below, y'all. Go ahead and click on the link, follow, like everything for FinTech Latina.
Yes.
I was like, I know this is more Puerto Rican, but I was like, she had no coquito during the holidays. She was like, she probably had too much because she was trying to get through it. Like,
no tamales.
No tamales.
I had to work all day. Yeah, it was a lot. But again, the deal signed New Year's Eve at like 8 p.m. So I definitely was popping bottles after that. Happy New Year, everybody. We're done. No, it's great. Again, that's just one point where it can be stressful, but overall, you can attest to this. My life has truly changed. I think being in this career that it's opened such a world of opportunities and possibilities that I wish it was, again, more talked about. I think recently now the rise in tech sales is being discussed, but you'll notice there's a lot of people who are much older than you probably in your role, or not in your role, but like in your company. You're like, wow, they've been gatekeeping this for such a long time. And it's good now that more people are aware and they can transition into sales.
One of the reasons why I started this channel.
Exactly. So
Well,
thank you for having me on, by the way.
yeah, I'm about to have you back. We haven't even talked about commission checks yet.
Yeah,
That's
no, I am
Woo!
again. I am down to be transparent as you want.
Oh.
Hopefully, my company doesn't get mad at me. No, they'll be good. I got to be careful. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I can't be disclosing too much. But as far as again, commissions, paychecks, how my day-to-day role, I'm happy to discuss. Again, feel free to follow me. People, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I try to respond to everybody. It might
She
take
does.
a bit, but I do. My ADHD kicks in sometimes, but I do make sure I respond eventually. So happy to assist in any way. And I also do offer career coaching services. So on my Instagram, you can find a link to set up a call with me to discuss, either interview prep or how to again transition into tech. So happy to help in that regard.
Yeah, that coaching call is gonna blow up. So with that being said, oh man, this has been a great conversation. I'm so thankful to have Astrid on with us. Go ahead, click on the links below. And like I always say, family, until next time, I hope to see you on the other side. Take care, y'all.